Let's roll. Co-pilot on the passenger side, be so fly. Yeah. She so lit, we so high. Just me and my chick, yeah. Just me and my chick, yeah. Co-pilot on the passenger side, be so fly. Yeah. She so lit, we so high. Just me and my chick, yeah. Just me and my chick, yeah. She give me a bit of her love. Yo, what up, y'all? Welcome to another one, man. It's your boy Ra1, and this is Sparking Conversation. And y'all know what I do each and every week, man. I get up here and I talk to some of the world's most interesting people. And tonight, I'm going to do the same thing. But before we do that, I got to do like I do each and every week. I got to start the show off with giving thanks, right? Giving thanks to all the people that download the audio version of this platform. I keep telling y'all each and every week, y'all the real MVPs. I always let my other platformers know that the audio version of your platform is the most important part. This visual part, that's a bonus. All these other things that people try to do, you know, to go viral and different things, those are bonuses. But the meat and potatoes of your platform is the audio, right? Got to look at it. The same way people consume books is the same way people consume podcasts. You can never look at it any other way other than that, right? Turn yourself, remember, you're media, right? So don't hesitate to get the audio version of your platform to all the places that stream audio versions of podcasts. I'm telling y'all, just understand that that's a very, very valuable tool to have in your belt when it comes to this platform game. I bet. But double salute to all of y'all that downloaded, because y'all all over the world, and I thank y'all so much. Okay? I appreciate y'all. Gotta always shout y'all out. All right. Other than that, listen, let's get into some other things, right? Because I got to get into We Don't Wait, We Create, and let y'all know what happened. So before we do that, I have to let y'all know that when it comes down to your health, you know, health is wealth. We got to make sure that we reiterate that health is wealth. I told you guys on every platform so far that all you have to do is go out there, and I want you guys to check the effects of parasites in the body. If you could check those things out, I want you to compare it to things that you may be feeling, things you may be dealing with in your own life and on your own. If they match up, then you know that you may need a detox. And I'm gonna tell a lot of people this, yo. The number one thing you can do to avoid a lot of things is to fast. And I know that's the hardest thing for most people to do, right? Because it requires a certain type of discipline. You have to be mentally and spiritually strong enough to fast long enough to really get these things out of you. But in the interim, a lot of us should be intermittent fasting anyway, right? But if you guys go ahead and do the information, do the research, figure it out, compare it to yourself, and if that's the case, I want you guys to click the link in the description to the parasite detox, and make sure that you do what you got to do to take care of yourself, all right? Because there's nobody coming to save us, y'all, I promise. And if they do, if they are coming, then whenever they get here, we want to be ready. You get what I'm saying? Let's just be ready, y'all, right? They spraying all these things in the air. They putting all these things in the water. Y'all got to remove, we got to remove these things. You know what I'm saying? These are things that we have to do. We have to do our part. We can't allow people to just do what they want to us and just accept it. Oh, that's just how it is. Okay. Well, that's just how it is. And then this is just how we should do. We should pay attention and help ourselves, y'all. Word. Other than that, thank y'all so much for paying attention to that. Click the link in the description. Oh, and I wanted to make sure that all my podcasters know there is a link in the description for RSS feed if you guys want to get started for free. If you haven't already, if you guys are not, if you're doing a platform podcast and whatever, and you don't have your podcast on Apple, Spotify, and all these other places, click the link in the description, start for free. If not, it is a very, very low cost for you guys to be able to push that button and send your podcast to where it needs to go for you to maneuver, because we want you to get those brands, that we want you to really get what's supposed to happen to help you support yourself through your platform. That's how you're going to get there. I promise. All right. Make sure you pay attention to that. All right. Other than that, look, y'all know we rolling out here. I told y'all every week we dropping new content. Therapy Going Wrong Part 18 with Katerina in the building. Katerina is from Greece. The accent is crazy. And yo, we doing it. We really working out here. And I thank y'all, man. Today is the day that it dropped. Thank y'all for all of y'all that's been pushing play on all the content so far. And I definitely appreciate y'all. Okay. Now, So I'm gonna switch over real quick because there's a couple of things I gotta do before I bring my guest up. Real quick, we don't wait, we create. That happened this past weekend, right? We don't wait, we create. Y'all know that was a networking event that I'm putting together that I wanted to bring all these different facets of the business together for us to work together to find ways of us creating, because there's always a way that each and every person can work together, right? And so it was a great success. Thank y'all so much. All the people that came, I didn't get pictures with everybody, but I did get a lot of pictures with people. So on my page, it's there. You guys could go there, check out the photo album. If you're on Facebook, follow me on Facebook. You guys can go to the photo album. We Don't Wait, We Create. Go check it out. It was really dope. But part two, already ready. We're going to be ready in August. Now, what I told y'all, I want to keep growing and making it bigger. So I got actor Vincent M. Ward in the building, right? This guy's from Ocean's 11, and very recently, he was on Walking Dead for a bunch of seasons and stuff like that. Well, he has a new show coming out where he's a serial killer stepdad. It's crazy. It's a movie. And then he has another horror film coming out, but he's in a whole bunch of other movies that's coming out with a bunch of different people and all of that. But he's going to be there. He's going to be the keynote speaker. And so what I'm telling y'all is that we're growing, right? And I'm also wanting to bring bigger and better opportunities, but I also want people to make sure they get that mindset right, man. If a cat like me can bring this type of stuff together just off of the thought or just off of the vision or just off of the love of being creative, what I'm saying to all my other people out there that are just as creative, it's time for us to be around like-minded people, okay? We have to put yourself in the right energy. You cannot avoid it. If this is a thing inside of you that was given to you, you didn't have to ask for the gifts that you've been given. But for some reason, everybody wants to give their gift away, or either they want to suppress their gift because they feel like it's not important to the people that are around them. Then you're around the wrong people. That's all I'm going to say, right? Because in the same interim that other people, there's somebody out here right now that is selling time. Do you know that not too long ago, our cell phones, we used to pay by the minute? You know, somebody was smart enough to trick us into buying time. Do y'all know that? Just think about that. If they could sell time, then whatever your gift is, you could find a way to make that gift work for you where it can sustain you. Trust me. We allowed somebody to trick us into buying time. As soon as it came out, we should have all came together like, man, we're not paying y'all for the minute. What's wrong with y'all? Hey, what you? No, we're not doing that. If y'all gonna put these out, do this. But we did. We ran with it, right? And they use us. You know how many people had $1,000 cell phone bills at one time, y'all? Tricked us into paying for time that God gave us time, and then we got people who are tricking us into buying it. They selling us something that they didn't buy. Think about that. Be you. You know it's the hardest thing for most people to do. Outside of that, let me get into my rant real quick because I have my guests. And you know what I'm saying? I don't want to keep her waiting. We got to get into this conversation. But look, I know a bunch of people hit me. There's a couple of things going on outside. And so it was this thing. All right, back. So we know just recently, we had the guy in the news who unalived all his children. Well, 8 children. 7 of them was his, 1 of them wasn't. The story goes on, right? He was a Army vet and, suffering from PTSD. So here's the thing. Whenever these things happen, uh, the one thing that automatically a lot of people go to, because when you see the comments and you see the way people are sharing the story, the number one thing they go to is they start to figure out like the mental stability of a person, right? They start to, make that be the point of everything that's going on. And when I think about that, I always think about, yeah, y'all right. Y'all are right. It's about the mental stability of anybody, but we got to understand what cause and effect is too. There's a lot of people that know people are suffering from certain things, and you still try to trigger them. Now, listen, I want to make sure y'all understand my comments are not making excuses for anything that happened. Trust me, I don't even understand the mindset to want to do something like that, especially take your own or even harm or do anything to children at all. So listen, that's not my point. My point is this is how I understand how the news is being used against us. Because whenever they talk about these things, they never talk about it from the perspective of what happened. They only talk about it from the perspective of not necessarily what happened, but why it happened. They only talk from the perspective of what happened and then what the cause may be. But they never tell us, well, then if the cause is from him being mentally disturbed and all these other things, then if it was based on him being in the military, then what was he in? Like what type of scenario that was going on where, you know, this country is able to help their people who going through these things for their country? Like where's that at? Because at the end of the day, the people that are around you, if they know these things, there's certain precautions that they have to take too. I'm not saying people should walk on eggshells, but you have to make decisions, right? That whether if a person is too unstable, if you can't be around them, we have to make sure, y'all, right, that we are able to make certain decisions based on just doing the right thing and not always being able to just suffer through stuff. We just go through so much trauma in our lives that we just suffer through things. And I feel bad for the family of all these people that lost all these people, right? But that leads me into my next thing about the news. You know, they got this one company that just bought up a whole bunch more news stations, right? So at the end of it, it seems like they're going to be owning about 67% of all news stations. So y'all know what's getting ready to happen, right? Y'all know how the news and what is getting ready. Y'all know the propaganda is coming, right? It's coming. So for podcasters and all of us out here, listen, we got to stay on our square. We got to be able to report exactly what's going on out here. We can't be afraid to speak out. And then we have to be able to use our power, which is our numbers together. Listen, if these social media platforms and everybody start pulling back and doing all that stuff that they did during the last administration where they were silencing people who wanted to speak out of this about certain things, then yeah, we need to pull back, y'all. We need to. There's always an alternative in order for you to get your message out, right? Think about how many different news outlets it is now. So think about that, y'all. So listen, I'm gonna shift because I have my guests and we got to talk about a couple of things. And the reason why I'm grateful to have my guests on today, and we want to talk about these things because I know on the platform a lot. I talk about our lives for all of us that are living this life right now during this time right now. That there's a battle going on, and it's not just about the flesh. It is a spiritual battle, right? And we have been used physically through our spirituality in order for us to be able to do exactly what these people out here want us to do. And that's to be against each other, not to work together, not to see the value in the things that we've gone through in order for us to know where to go. Because we could get there quicker together than we can alone. And for some reason, that's the agenda. And it's always been the agenda, right? It's which why I don't like to identify as a color, because what does that mean? What does a color mean? A color gives us no identity as for nothing. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of people who have a culture, they have an identity that share the same color. So what difference is being called a color going to be? So spirituality is very important. I'm going to bring my guest up because we got to get into this conversation. So without further ado, let's get Heather in the building real quick, y'all.
Hi.
Hello, hello.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here to have this conversation.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much for being on the platform this evening. Please, please let the people know. Like, introduce yourself to the audience, and then let them know why we on the platform this evening.
Sure. So, my name's Heather, and I'm the owner of Divine Ascension Company. I am an energy healer, a channel, and a leadership and organizational consultant for busy executives. But I also have a master's in psychology. So, I kind of blend science and spirit and lived experience with everything that I do. I have a pretty colorful past myself. So, being able to utilize that in a way to help other people has been amazing. I'm in the works, actually, just hit that button to publish my first book. So that'll be out soon. I'm pretty excited about that. I have my own podcast and a YouTube channel that I have a lot of stuff going on with as well. And like I said, I'm really excited to be here to have this conversation because I want to be able to share a different perspective about life, about the world, about the universe, and how it works with people to kind of shed light on what's going on in a way that everyone can understand and still be able to open their mind and expand their consciousness a little bit to look at things a little bit differently than we have in the past.
Right, right, right. Which I think is really important. I think, being able to have that sort of balance, right? Because I think that's the thing most people have to try to come to grips with. There is a really huge spiritual part to our lives that we're living, right? And so whenever you talk about your past, um, talk to us a little bit about that part. Is the things that you went through, and you said a colorful past, because I think that's your road to your purpose. Uh, I think everybody that goes through whatever they go through, it leads them into their purpose, right? Which hence is what led you into yours. So, through your colorful past, how important do you feel like experiences when it comes to advocating as a coach and stuff like that versus somebody who just goes and learns about it?
Well, I think that those two things are quite different, depending on the coaching field that you go into. I'm going to speak in generalities here. I think that the experience is absolutely important because you don't want to hire a business coach who's never owned a business before, right? You don't want to hire a
Mm,
healer who's never had to heal anything before. And we all have stuff that we can heal, let's be honest. So the fact that I went through so much in my life, anything from sexual abuse and trauma to military abuse, as you were talking about a little bit ago, bullying growing up, moving around a lot, living in poverty, like all kinds of things have really helped shape who I am. And as I went through my healing journey and started to look at things from a different lens, I started to appreciate these experiences, even though they're perceivably negative or were traumatizing at times. It helped not only helped shape who I am now, but also helped me break generational curses from my ancestral line. It helped me to be able to be in a position where I can help other people who are going through the same thing a little bit better because I learned a lot about self-love. I learned a lot about self-worth, and I learned a lot about speaking my truth. And by sharing my experiences, I feel like not only can I help other people as a coach or as a healer, but also I have that extra level of empathy where I can relate to them and be like, I know exactly how you feel. You're not alone. You don't have to go through this alone. And to have someone else who's been there, who's open and willing to talk about their experience, I think adds that extra layer to what I do as well.
yeah, I think it's very important for a person that that teaches something to really have experience in that. I think there are things in life that a person can actually go to school and learn and probably be able to reteach to other people. But life experience is one of those things that you don't sign up for, right? You don't know the course history or what to expect from the course that you take in whenever we are going through this school of life, hard knock life, or whatever we want to call it, school of hard knocks. But yeah, I like that because let's really dive in that for a little bit because you know trauma is pretty much the 50% of people's personality. Would you agree with that or no?
I don't know if I would agree with those percentages, but I will
Hmm.
say that it is very common for people to take their trauma, their experience, their diagnoses from a doctor and make it become their identity. Because when you talk
Hmm.
to someone and you're like, oh, I got this diagnosis of PTSD or of, autism or whatever the case may be, they're like, okay, well, now that label has limitations attached to it. It has expectations attached to it. And so now there are many people, and again, I'm speaking in generalities here. I know not everyone does this, but it is common for people to take that and be like, okay, well, this is who I am now. So if something happens, it's very easy to use it as a crutch or an excuse for behavior because you're like, oh, well, I went through this thing, so now I act like this. Well, yes, that might be point A to point B and to point C that you went through, but it doesn't have to be that way. It's up to that person and to take responsibility and accountability for healing through those things and working through them and making them like I'm ADHD and I was just asked recently on another podcast about how I feel about that. And I was like, I think of it as a superpower because I've learned how to use it to work for me versus against me. All of my trauma, all of
Mhm.
my experiences, I've turned into a positive rather than continuing the cycle or using it as an excuse to act or behave or think a certain way. I did it first because that's a result of the trauma, but I broke that cycle and went through the healing and did the hard work to get past that.
Yeah, I get that. So I guess what I was saying, like, so my point for asking that question about the 50% is because for most people, they hide behind two different variations of their life from just my experience, right? Number one is zodiac, and then number two, their trauma, right? These are the two things that people expect a person to understand about them when it comes to them, right? Because a lot of times when it comes down to that living your truth thing, part of their truth is that they've accepted whatever diagnosis they've been given themselves or what someone else has given them. They've accepted that. So now, like you said earlier, oh, I got, or ADHD, or I have anxiety, or if I have these other things. Now they've adopted that, right? They've said that, okay, now that's part of me. And then the other half is whatever version of the zodiac that they read that just relates to them so wholeheartedly that they get that. Those are the two things that I feel like people govern their personality against. And I think for you, which is great for you to be a coach, is that you were able, like you said, to turn your L's that was meant for losses into lessons where people that particular switch is not there. So that's why I feel like coaches like you are important to help people flip that switch from understanding that, hey, listen, yes, we've all been through these things, but these things are not who we are. And so that's why I asked that because yeah, man, people will hit you with that in a heartbeat. Oh, I don't trust people, or I don't do this, or I've been through this. And they'll tell you what they don't like before they tell you what they do like. Yeah.
And I agree 100%. But there's also, so one of the things that I take pride in teaching my clients and pretty much anyone that I interact with is about sovereignty and empowerment, right? So there's
Mm,
uh you have to kind of figure out what's in your control and what's not in your control. So your zodiac, you can't control that. You were born, it happened. This is, if you follow astrology, that's what it is. Cool. But as far as the trauma and your experience goes, yes, you can't control the fact that it happened to you. It happened to you. And one thing that I had to say about that is guess what? You went through the hardest part. You experienced it, you survived through it, you're still here. You already went through the hardest part. Now
mm,
it's up to you to take control of that. And everybody's in control of their reactions to things. Everyone is in control of their own behaviors, thoughts, actions. So it's up to you to take responsibility and not and make sure that that doesn't become your identity, because who wants to be
right.
identified that way, right? I would rather you
Mm,
know about me that I love nature, that I love to go to the beach, that I'm 41 years old and that I have, this amazing cat that I love and has taught me unconditional love. I would rather you know those things about me than the fact that I was sexually abused, than the fact that I was bullied in high school, than the fact that I was, assaulted in the military, that, I was poor growing up and that I have all these limiting beliefs and all these things. I don't want people to think that that's who Heather is, because I am so much more than that. And everyone else is so much more than their experience, but they have to work through that and figure out what that looks like.
yeah. But healing though, right? Because the one thing about abuse, right? And for whatever type of abuse a person had to suffer through, um, you know, a lot of it came from the people that were closest to the person, right? So that's where this whole dynamic of trust comes in, right? So I think for you, that spiritual aspect is a very important part of that healing process that I think most people have to realize, because sometimes I think when it comes down to conversations I've had with other people, it's the replaying of what happened. See, they fight against that replay, right? It's like when they go through certain things that are traumatic for them, especially when it comes down to physical abuse, they fight so hard against the replay in their mind, right? That every time it comes up, they try to fight again. They be angry. It's like that thing to fight against it. So, what type of tools do you think is there for people to be able to fight that replay that keeps dragging them down, that won't allow them to go into full healing?
So, with the way that I do my healing process, you don't have to go through that replay because for a couple reasons. One, most likely, this is something that is a repeated pattern. And I know that there was multiple times that I've experienced the same thing, and a lot of those were in my early childhood, and I've blocked those memories. I don't want to resurface those. I don't want to live through those again. So what I do is I look at everything from multiple layers. You have your mind, your body, your spirit. You have your mental, emotional, energetic, all of the different layers to things. So I try to approach it from an energetic standpoint where we find the root cause, the actual root cause of why these things are happening. Because I'm going to let you in on a little secret, and this is my perspective, and from what I've learned through the spiritual community, is that we go through before we're incarnated on this planet in this lifetime. We go through a period of life planning. So all of these lessons, all of these experiences that we go through in this lifetime, we chose for ourselves. Yes. So this is why I look at all of the things that I went through as a gift rather than a curse or through that victim mentality, because it was here to teach me something. It was something I put in place for myself to learn, to grow, and to use it for multiple things. Like I said, generational curse breaking, healing past lives, stuff like that. So um, going to the energetic level and finding that root cause, whether it stems from this lifetime or a past lifetime, is a way that you can break that cycle without having to actually sit there and replay and relive that experience, because nobody wants to do that. We went through it once. We don't need to go through it again. So you attack it from a different lens, a different perspective, get to the root of why it happened and what you were supposed to learn from it, and energetically break that cycle so you don't have to go through that again.
Yes, yes. Now that makes sense. That comes from the choice of making the choice of saying I want to heal from this, right? And not allow it to be a part of my identity, because it becomes so much a part of a person's identity, the trauma that they've gone through, right? So that I think that's what makes it so important about people like you, right? Is because we have to have people in the world that's able to look through a lens of half full and not half empty, right? Because you gotta want to know more about your spiritual self to even know that there's an ascension space for you, right? Or that reincarnation happens to us, or why you have deja vu, or why you're able to do things and you just don't understand why, or why you may have anxiety or fear of heights and different things. You don't know if all these different things came from past lives, but the one thing that you said that I don't think a lot of people realize is that before you're born, you're not the only person that has said that, that's in the spiritual space on this platform. That's how I know there's a level of education that a lot of people need to have, because all you guys said the same thing about the life that we reincarnate into. We chose it. And we chose it because we felt like we can get through it, whatever it was, or we can overcome that. And we saw the outcome in order for us to ascend out of that cycle, that repeated cycle. But that comes with a sense of seeking spirituality outside of religion. So let's ask you this question, because we gotta know, right? All right. So what part of your spiritual perspective comes from a religious perspective? Because I
Okay.
feel like that makes a difference.
It does. So growing up, my mother's family was religious. My grandmother was an ordained deacon by the time she passed away. My mom was forced to go to church every weekend or every Sunday, and didn't want me and my brother to have to go through that. So we went every Sunday when we were little. When we got a little bit older, it was just holidays. And then she gave us the opportunity to choose for ourselves. And I'll tell you, I had a near death experience. I was deep in addiction and drinking, and I tried to find God. I tried to look at organized religion as a way to answer those bigger questions, like, why am I here? There's got to be something bigger than this. Like, what's the point? And so I tried to read the Bible. I got through most of it, but there was just so many things in organized religion that I did not agree with, for one. And most importantly, is that the people who are in charge of that organized religion, whatever that may be, the pastor, the father, um, they tell you that you have to go through them to speak to God. And I was like, why? Why does there have to be a middleman? Why can't I speak to God myself? So that was the first thing. And the other thing that I didn't like was that if you go to different sermons, different practices, different, you know, services, and they're interpreting the Bible in a way that works for them. And I know that the Bible is very symbolic. There is a lot of stories in there that I agree with on a symbolic level, not a literal level. But it took that questioning and that not being afraid to question and think for myself, again, back to that sovereignty and empowerment, thinking for myself and be like, okay, well, this doesn't resonate with me. I agree with some things, but there's a lot that go against my own principles and things that I believe to be true. So after my near death experience, after turning all my emotions off for years and becoming this person I didn't recognize, I had to look at myself in the mirror and be like, who am I really? Because this isn't it. And I strayed off of the organized religious path. I found Buddhism. That was kind of my gateway into spirituality because, again, there were many principles that I agreed with, but not everything. And so,
Right.
what I try to tell people is to do your own research, find your own information, take what resonates from each one that feels true to you, and speak your own truth, believe your own truth, because we all have our own truth. It doesn't have to be mandated or preached to you. Find out what's true for you.
Nah, you're right. And don't be afraid to ask questions, right? Don't be afraid to be a person that says to themselves, this doesn't feel right to me. I need to know a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because so many people blindly follow someone's words. I had this conversation not too long ago, and I was telling people how much information they put in movies, but because of the entertainment value, people either like or dislike it based on that. So we were talking about the Book of Eli, right? And I was telling people that, that movie didn't get so many good ratings, right? Based on what was going on, because I think these people didn't get the meaning. The meaning of it was, they destroyed all the books, right? Because they didn't want the people to have access to knowledge. So then with that, they were looking for the Bible because the guy who was looking for it, he controlled all of, I wouldn't say the assets, but he controlled all of the commodities. So like the water, the food, all of those things. He had those things under control. So that's how he was able to control the people, but he didn't have the words to control their mind. Right? He can only control their physical. He needed the words to control their mind. So he was looking for the last printed version of the Bible. So come to find out, and then when Denzel's character was a person who was carrying the Bible, but the Bible was written in Braille, right? And so the whole time his character was blind, walking by blind faith. So it's so many different aspects of the movie that people didn't catch. So the entertainment value turned them off versus them understanding the spiritual meaning of these particular things. And I thought about that with religion, just based off of that movie, how the words are used to control people. It's not a space for spirituality to really grow, for you to really learn that voice that's inside of your head. Like, how do you have that? If not that there's something that's inside of you, right? That's bigger than you. What houses that spark? What is the thing that makes you you? And that's the thing that I think a lot of people fight against, the figuring out that part of who they are. It's just the trauma, and whatever they face every day is their identity. And so I think that's why you're so important in this fight to, you know, people understanding that there is a balance. Do you think that religion helped you at all, though, in the sense of that one statement that you made earlier with the symbolism of things in the Bible versus it being literal? Do you take any from religion that really helped you in your spiritual journey, regardless?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
so the fact that I had this experience, I'm gonna kind of tell a little pre-story here, but I had a huge issue with the word God for a long time. A long
Mm,
time. It was a trigger for
mm,
me because of the experiences that I had. But I came to realize, because I know a lot of people, I'm only bringing this up because I know a lot of people share this same trigger. And it's
right.
not about God itself. It's not about what God represents. It's not about what God means to you. It's what people do in the name of God. It is how they
Mm,
weaponize the words to take your power, to take your control. And that was, God was that, the face of that. Because anytime I would hear people start talking about God, I'd be like, all right, I don't want to be a part of this conversation, because it ultimately would lead down that road. So I have since gotten over that. And so I when I speak of the universe or I speak of source, that's what I'm talking about, is God, the same thing.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So the one thing that is most prevalent right now that I do take from that experience and from the Bible is the coming of the Christ, right? This is very important for what we're going through right now with this ascension process. But again, it's not literal. Could you imagine if there was a zombie Christ out there running around? Like, people don't return from the dead in that way. What Christ consciousness, or what the rising of the Christ, the coming of the Christ means, is that we as people, as humanity, are meant to discover that spark within us that you were talking about, and have this realization that we are a one people, that we are all one, we're all together, we are all the same here, eternal beings having human experiences. And by reaching that level of understanding and embodying that, that is called Christ consciousness. It is all what Christ was trying to teach about unconditional love, being in service to others as well as to yourself. And, really taking that loving standpoint in your life and treating other people the way you want to be treated, by having empathy, by being understanding for people in respect to wherever they are in their journey. And that is truly what this ascension is actually all about, is reaching that Christ consciousness stage of existence. And so it really does translate from the story if you look at it symbolically, not literally.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I like that because I agree with you wholeheartedly. There is a space for see and see that's the thing about the Bible. The Bible has been attached to religion, but it's not necessarily religious because I always tell the people, well, then the people that was in the Bible didn't have a Bible. So that's why I'm saying we got to realize that, the things that have been written that people have found and they have put together and we understand during that time frame, but they were people who all lived through it. We got to understand the experience behind spirituality, and I think that's the part that people miss about the stories in the Bible. They don't get the experience. They're looking at the story. Again, the entertainment value, the part that they look at, the literal sense of what they're reading and not the actual, descriptions or how people, because this is another thing, right? I don't know. So in this quest of being spiritual, you start to realize that there are a lot of things out here that exist outside of us that are intelligent, right? It's very hard for you not to understand that. But then there are people who just for whatever reason just won't believe it, right? There's nothing that you can do to convince them to understand that there are other things outside of us that have a sense of intelligence that operate in a more higher vibration spiritually. And it's not because we can't reach there. It's because we don't know that we are to operate in that type of energy too. So how do you talk to your people about energy? Because for the most part, um, understanding energy will help a lot of people understand what rooms to be in and what rooms not to, what conversations to engage in and what not to. So how do you help your people, or how would you suggest people when it come down to energy? Because I think it's important.
Sure. So there we I was talking about the multiple systems and layers that we have that make us whole. One of those is your aura. Everybody's heard of an aura before. whether it's a color or a feeling or whatever, but we each have one. It's the energetic field that surrounds our body. And so when you go out into the world, into the environment, you interact, your aura interacts with other people's auras, and that is full of energy. So when you're going through something and you're very emotional, that emotion, that vibration, that energetic frequency is going to radiate through your aura. So when you cross paths with someone and your auras touch, for a visualization purpose, they're going to be able to feel that energy, and vice versa. If someone else is
Mm,
going through something, like I know I've walked into a room and I can tell that there was just a fight that happened in here recently, because you can feel that energy in the air. And that also comes down to trusting your own intuition and your knowing your own emotions too, so you know what you're feeling, and knowing what's yours and what isn't, because it's very easy to absorb that energy into your auric field, into your energy field, and then it'll feel like it's yours, but it's not. It's because you picked it up somewhere else. So energetic hygiene is very important. Learning how to determine what's yours and what isn't, how to protect yourself when you go out around other people's energies, and also just becoming a master of your own emotions and energies as well, so you aren't transferring that to other people. Because it's so easy, you look at people who are in customer service jobs or restaurant jobs, and they're like, somebody comes in and they're super hungry or they're super frustrated, and they take that out on the other person. Well, not only is that energy coming out through those words, but it's also coming out through their energetic field as well. And now you're affecting that other person by taking your own things out on them in multiple ways,
mm.
that now you've just perpetuated that bad mood and transferred it to someone else. It's like a disease, it's like a sickness, if you want to look at it that way, how it spreads. So becoming aware of that, knowing how to trust your intuition, where you're seeing somebody and you're like, man, that person's giving me bad vibes. People can relate to that, right? Somebody's giving me bad vibes. Well, that's your intuition and your energetic field of interacting with that other person's telling you, hey, this is not a safe space, keep it moving. So it really does come down to practice and being consciously aware of how that works and what it feels like to be able to really save yourself from some pretty nasty situations.
Yeah, yeah, because as adults, we have to take control over our emotions, right? Because as children, or whenever we are younger, most of the trauma that we go through because we are not in control,
Mhm.
right? Somebody else is in control, right? And then they take those things out on people, right? So people suffer through so many different traumas based on someone else being in control. But then when you become an adult and you realize that, you can't really blame anyone else, it's really on you at that particular point. Um, it's either, I think that's the duality in it. It's either you figure it out from that perspective, like, okay, so since it's on me, let me learn how to get rid of this. Let me learn how to heal from this. Or if this is me, this is just what I'm going to be. I'm going to be this. I'm not going to let nobody this. I'm going to be that. It's those two spaces. And I just, that's why I feel like in the job that you have, um, why it's so good that even though you have your own platform, that you come on other platforms, and so that people can find you, right? Because there's somebody who's on the other side who's saying, nope, this is who I am. They did this to me, so I'm not this, I'm not that. They don't know, right? That there's somebody out there that they can relate to. They know that there are people who have a degree in psychology, right? They know there are people who went to school to learn how to sit and listen and maybe break down whatever they feel like is going on with you. But very seldom do they know, like we said, the person that is actually helping you through is a person that went through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have both. I have the degree and the education as well as that, lived experience. And Western medicine and talk therapy has its time and place. I had a therapist for years myself, and I will give them credit where credit's due, because everybody hates. They're like, "Oh, how does that make you feel? How does that make you feel?" And that's like the whole stereotypical therapy
Yeah.
thing. But there's a reason why they ask you that, even though they're not going to tell you this. I'm going to tell you this. There's a reason why they ask you that, because how does that make you feel makes you deep dive into those emotions, into that.
Mm.
And so when you learn to trust what you feel and know what you feel and be able to look at that and analyze it and be like, okay, well, this trigger happened. This is how it made me feel. Well, now that you get that feeling and that energy involved again, you can really, like I said before, take into consideration the root causes. Okay, well, this makes me feel this way. What else makes me feel this way? Is there a correlation? Is there a repeated pattern? Is there some sort of way that we can find a root cause for all of this without having to go through that trauma experience again? So it is important to ask yourself, how does this make me feel? But it's not just about the emotions, it's about that energetic part that we just talked about as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I was thinking about, alcohol in general, right?
Mhm.
Um, a lot of people who abuse alcohol, they use that as a vice to escape, right? And a lot of other harder drugs that, a lot of people do. What type of space do you feel like you can speak from to a person who is battling addiction as part of their coping mechanism to deal with their past traumas?
Well, there's different reasons why you would use that as an escape route. And I
Mm.
and did the same thing. I was a bartender for 20 years. I was drunk 3, 4 nights out of the week, and that might even be being generous to myself. And went down the drug path and everything. So I have that lived experience as well. But I was using it as an escape route, but I was using it for escaping multiple things. On one hand, I was an empath and I was feeling those energies. I didn't know how to manage that. I didn't know what was happening. It was just like chaos all the time because I was feeling not only my own emotions,
Mm.
which I
Other
didn't
people.
know, but everybody else's. So it was just like static all the time. I it wasn't until my 30s where I turned all my emotions off and turned them back on that I actually got to sit down and realize what each emotion felt like, because I never got to experience that before because I was feeling all of them at the same time. And most of them weren't mine. So I was using the alcohol to numb that feeling, all that.
Mm.
I was numbing it. I didn't want to feel all that stuff. I also, again, I have ADHD. So when I would drink or do drugs, it slowed my mind down to the point where I was started to feel like a normal person. So there was that as well. But also because I was afraid of facing my trauma, I was afraid of going back and doing that inner work at this time, that I was using the alcohol and the drugs as a way to prevent myself from being in a situation where I had to be alone with my own thoughts.
Mm.
So there's many different ways that we use these things as coping mechanisms, and I'm sure that there's plenty more. Those were just the ones that were relevant for me personally. But it's depending on what you're using it for would determine how to work through that. But even though it's difficult, there are other ways to cope with things without using drugs and alcohol. And it's a difficult journey, but it is possible.
Right. And so, with that being one of the things that people deal with the most nowadays, because the bottle is their therapist or whatever other vice is their therapist, right? And not only sometimes is it that, it's more of their, security, so to speak, right? Because like you said, you didn't want to be alone in those thoughts. So you would put yourself in a position where you were either, is there and then I'm asleep,
Mhm.
or whatever. And so that's why I feel like in the job that you have when it comes down to helping people heal, that's probably got to be one of the strongest, if not the most draining parts of your job, right? It's because that part is probably most people that don't have seek professional help, right? Because that comes with a little bit of organization to really go out there and get a professional. Like you got to have insurance if you can, and outside of that, you got to pay on your own. And a person who has a vice or an addiction is not really going to give that money to something else other than the addiction or the vice, right? So that's the thing. So I think with you having a learned experience and being there for people, again, people got to be able to find you. So that's why I'm glad that you uh, are doing my platform, and probably I hope you continue to do other platforms, and people who are watching that have a platform or watch the playback will book you on their platform, because people like you, they need to be, they just need to be known that there's somebody else out there from this level that can relate. Because I'm telling you, that part, especially alcohol, right? Drugs, if a person is really out there on certain type of drugs, they're not coming on nobody's podcast, right? But alcohol, right, is the most accessible to a lot of people's coping mechanism. So that part right there of learning how to not allow that to be what you escape from, you or whatever, because that has ruined so many relationships. So, yeah, I
And
think that's very important. Go ahead.
and alcohol is used, you were talking earlier about how the powers that be like to take our own power away and use, propaganda and the news and social media platforms against us. Well, there's a reason why alcohol is legal and weed isn't. The people who
Right.
are drinking alcohol are staying at a lower vibration. They're easier to manipulate because they're not in their right mind. There's many different things. But also, I wanted to reiterate something is that when I do work with people who have an addiction, because I've been there myself and I've went through, nobody likes being told what to do. You want to
Right.
tell me that I need to stop? I'm not going to listen to you until I'm ready to stop. So what I do is, unless you are in imminent danger to yourself or someone else, I'm not going to initially ask you to stop drinking or doing drugs. You do you if you feel that's necessary. What I do for you instead is I find out the reasons why you're drinking or doing the drugs, and we work from there, because I found that because my results happen very quickly because I'm working from an energetic level, that once you work through those root causes, people will find that they don't want to drink and do drugs on their own.
Mm,
And that is important because you can't tell them what to do. You can't expect them to change until they hit rock bottom, as they say, or they actually reach that point where they want to change. But if they're willing to actually put in a little bit of work and look at themselves with someone who isn't going to make them relive any experiences, and actually, respect their journey and their decisions, because they're all adults, right? This is your decision. I'm just here to try to help you work through that in a way that's not going to be like everybody else.
right. Which is very important, because those be the things that people, especially, I've had people on who dealt with like sexual abuse, right? And to the point where, some people have turned to porn, some people have done other things because that has become an addiction for them too. So there's so many different types of addictions that people have to work through. That's a part of healing, that I'm glad that people like you exist because of those things. Everyone has a judgmental eye that doesn't see people, from a spiritual space. And religion has allowed a lot of people to be able to judge people, or feel like they have a need to judge people, outside of being able to see people from, a spiritual perspective. Like, yo, this person may have went through these things. All you're seeing is what you see now, but you don't know the cause of why this person is like that. You don't know what they went through in order for them to be this person that they are. That's why you said a couple of things earlier that is really important: empathy and respect. If you can lead with those two things, you can pretty much survive a relationship with anybody. And what I mean by survive is not that you have to be in one, but understanding that even if you're in a room with a person or working around people or whatever you got to be with, you can pretty much survive that day to day with them, especially if you're on your job, because some people come to work and go home and deal with some of the worst things ever and then come back to work the next day. And sometimes you never know because they hide it so very well.
Oh, yeah.
But when you're an empath, those people find you. And somehow they just start telling you their business, and you can never understand why. I mean, okay, you chose the right person. I'm definitely not going to tell you business. I'm not going to talk about you. I'm not going to judge you, but I don't know how you know, right? But it happens when you're that, right? And that's not a self-diagnosis. When people say they're empaths, it's not something to glorify, because an empath feels. It's not something that you want to walk around like it's a badge of honor. You don't want to feel certain things all the time. You don't want to walk into bad energy, right? But an empath is that. And it also opens up the doors for other people to speak to you in ways that, you know, you have to guess yourself, like, okay, what made this person feel like I'm the person they wanted to tell this to, right? So I'm thankful that you came on the platform today. I hope a lot of people got a lot out of our conversation today, and I hope that people that are watching the playback will reach out to you if they're dealing with things from those perspectives, right? So tell the people before we get out of there, how are they able to do that?
Sure. So you can go to my website, which is divineascensionco.com, DIVINEASCENSIONCO.com. And so you can find my email address on there. You can find my YouTube channel, which has a lot of free tools and resources on it as well. My podcast, my social media links, pretty much everything is available on there. I'm pretty simple to find, and I welcome anybody who needs anything. You can have a free discovery call with me if you're not sure where to go or just need someone to talk to. I have a bunch of different programs and sessions that are available, so that I can meet people where they're at.
Facts. And because you're unique in the way that you're the way that you coach people through their healing process. Just real quick before we go, can you name a few of the things that you actually help people with when it comes to the spiritual part? Because I don't want people to look at you as just another like life coach,
Sure.
right? I want them to understand that you are specifically, nothing to knock life coaches. I'm not knocking them. I'm just saying that you're not that, because I don't want people to look at you as just a life coach, right? So can you name just a few of the things that you help people healing with and how?
So I do actually, I am a certified coach. Actually, I do coaching sessions, but it's all based on where you are at in your spiritual journey. It's all very, asking those bigger questions and helping you work through that and raising your vibration and getting through this ascension and figuring out who you are at a soul level. But I specialize in inner child healing, which is a good way to help get through those traumatic experiences we were talking about at an energetic level, as well as shamanic style energy clearing. So if there's, stuck energy within you, we were talking about that auric field. Those emotions, those triggers that pop up, they're usually due to stuck energy from some sort of experience, transfer, whatever. I can help clear those out for you. I do Akashic Records readings and tarot readings to offer guidance and clarity on whatever step you are in your path. I do mission activations to help you kind of figure out what your soul's purpose is for this lifetime. So I kind of do a lot of different things, but from the healing aspect, I can do pretty much whatever, just coming from the psychology standpoint and the energetic standpoint. But that inner child healing and energy clearing is what I specialize in most.
Great. And that's why it was important. I wanted to make sure that you said that, because Akashic clearing, all of these different things, Akashic records and learning your past lives and those different things, these are things that most people don't know, but this is how you help break generational curses, right? And to break that generational curse is also your means to ascension, right? Because if not, you're going to come right back through the lesson again. So that's why I felt like it was important for you to say that, because although I know you're a coach, that's why I wanted to make sure that I say that you wasn't just a life coach, because we've had people on here who are life coaches, great people, and they do help people, but not in this particular space. I've got tarot readers, spiritual people on, all of those different things, but in the sense of being a coach, right? There's not been a person on here that coaches through that particular lens of spirituality and healing in a way where we can attack some of the things that you've been through from before. That's a little different. And then Akashic Records is not necessarily that, but it's your ancestral line. It's like things that your ancestors, the people who have passed on, the people who have ascended, who still want you to still move forward. There's a lot of things that go on in that particular ascension. It's more to it than just that, but it's so much of it that we that's been kept hidden from us. So thank you so much for breaking those things down so people could know. All right, so now I can know. All right, so these particular things, if they're interested, they could come to you for. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much for that. Right. So before we get out of there, are there any last words you would like to leave the audience with?
The only thing that I like to tell people when I get asked this question is don't be afraid to be your authentic self. Learn how to love yourself, accept yourself, the light and the shadow, because it all makes you the beautiful soul that you are, and we all are. So don't be afraid to be yourself.
Facts. And with that, y'all know what I do each and every week. Like I said, I get up here and I talk to some of the world's most interesting people. And next week, we're going to do the same thing. And I'm going to leave y'all with the same thing I leave y'all with every week. Remember, if you don't believe it in yourself, nobody else will. So until next week, y'all,